Hello and good morning again. Welcome back to AM Prime. So again, we're just going to jump straight into it. So TNT, Trinidad and Tobago, reinstates the Buggery law. What does this mean for human rights? The ruling to uphold the Buggery law in Trinidad and Tobago has sparked a deep and emotional reaction within the LGBTQ plus community and across the broader human rights landscape in the country. Many are grappling with the implications of a law that, purposefully or not, criminalizes consensual relationships between adults, despite the growing global consensus around LGBTQ plus rights and equality. Pride TT and other activists and activist groups have been at the forefront of challenging this law, highlighting not only the direct harm it causes to individuals, but also the wider message it sends about human dignity, equality, and more. Just one moment. Today we're speaking with Kennedy Everett Mirage, the co-founder of Pride TT, an LGBTQ activist group. Good morning, how are you doing?
Hi Jada, good morning, and thank you so much for having me, and thank you to all of your viewers for giving me the opportunity to speak on this very important topic this morning.
I would agree it is very important, so I do hope that we have a great conversation. So in your view, what does this ruling say about Trinidad and Tobago's commitment to progress?
Well, I guess that's a very important term, right? Progress. What exactly does it mean? Because clearly, you have laws on the book that undermines the human rights of a certain class of people, citizens in our country. You can't call it progress, plain and simple. I mean, so I think from our standpoint, we see this as a significant setback for human rights, both within our country as well as on the global stage. The reinstatement of this Buggery law it definitely undermines so much of the progress that many advocates would have been making on the as it relates to advancing issues of equality and recognizing the dignity for all LGBTQ people in our country. But more than that, it also raises serious concerns about the protection of the basic and essential fundamental freedoms that we all enjoy as citizens of our country in what is supposed to be what we would like to call a progressive, democratic society that protects citizens from all forms of discriminations and gives us citizens protections and privileges because we are citizens of this country.
All right. Did you ever think that we'd be in a place where the 2018 original ruling that we all celebrated in 2018 could be overturned?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Did you ever think we'd be in this position where the 2018 ruling would be overturned?
Listen, so again, we all knew going into this. This was something that Jason Jones would have done on his own. He didn't really consult the support or approval of any LGBT organizations, but he did inform us that this was something that he was doing as a private citizen of this country. And one of the things that he prepared us for is that this was going to be a long, tough, and drawn-out battle. As you said, 2018, he would have filed this motion in 2017, and the judgment came down in 2018, and now here we are in 2025 with the Court of Appeal ruling, knowing fully well that regardless whatever the outcome was here in 2025 with this Court of Appeal ruling, it would have gone to the Privy Council, and again, so it's going to be a long, drawn-out battle. I don't know when the end date for that is going to be, but it also means it gives us enough time, to prepare ourselves to move our country in the right direction, and that can come in many different ways. It comes on advocates working on the ground to transform people's minds and opinions when it comes to this particular so-called controversial issue, and it also gives us the opportunity to continue lobbying with our parliamentarians and elected officials to champion the notions of equality for all citizens in this country.
All right. Why did you put controversial issue in air quotes?
Because I don't see it as a controversial issue. Obviously, as a really gay man, I mean, this is my reality. It's my existence. It's what it is. I have to walk around with every single day. And I often tell people, me being gay is probably the least interesting thing about me. I mean, I'm just like everyone else. I have a job that's 9 to 5. He's a full. I have friends, I have family, I have interests, that goes outside of, my sexual orientation. I enjoy sports, I enjoy seeing TV shows, I like to lime and party and go to the beach on weekends. It's like, I am no different when you really get to know me. So I don't understand why there's, so many people in this country seems to be so preoccupied with who it is I sleep with and what I am doing in the privacy of my bedroom. Like, it's none of your business. I don't really spend any time trying to figure out what you are doing in your bedroom. So why are you so bothered about what I am doing in my bedroom? And that is what this law essentially is really all about when it comes down to, right? A lot of people tend to think of it, because we're talking about the act of buggery and, if I can say anal sex on TV right now. A lot of people tend to think that, it's an LGBT issue. And the ironic twist about this is that this law, before it was repealed in 2018, it was written in our books to criminalize consensual adult activity between adults who are both heterosexuals as well as homosexuals. So it's everybody that is impacted because of this law. So it's not to say that this is the gay law, this is the LGBT law that's going to imprison all of the gay people in this country. No, you as a straight person in a relationship, you can be impacted by this. They say it's not enforced, but again, that's another thing that I want to bring up here. People often use that as the scapegoat excuse. Well, it's not enforced. Well, if it's not enforced, why do we have it as a law in our country? Why is it restricting freedoms and privileges and protections, if it's not enforced? And then, we look at other countries and we see how leaders who are now taking the thrones of power are utilizing laws that are in existence from 100, 200 years ago to dismantle human rights and protections for their own citizens. Do we not recognize that this could also happen to us in our country, even though this is not enforced? We are in an election season. We don't know what the politicians have in mind when they get into that seat of power. It could very well be somebody might come there and say, you know what, I'm homophobic, I am anti-LGBT.
Yes.
Law is already legal, and this gives me the legal grounds to go after every person who I suspect maybe is LGBT and lock them up. Again, this is the reality of LGBT people in this country. And it's also your reality, given that the law criminalizes, as I said, consensual activities between consenting adults in the privacy of their bedrooms.
So in a parliament address many years ago, former Prime Minister Keith Rowley would have indicated that LGBTQ citizens are safe, they should feel safe, and that they are entitled to the rights of any other citizen. This now is sort of being challenged. Do you have any comment when it comes to that? Can we trust our politicians to uphold what they say?
I also remember when he became Prime Minister in 2015, parliamentarian colleague would have brought up an LGBT issue, and he very triumphantly got up and he asked the question, well, who are the LGBT people in this country? Almost as if he was unaware that there were gay people existing and who are citizens of his own country. But it was a curious curious response that he gave there, because the reason why he would have done it is because he knows that we live in a very homophobic society. He also knows there are no legal protections for persons who are homosexuals, and therefore, if that is the reality of our situation, there is no sensible gay person who's going to triumphantly and openly say, I am gay and I am the LGBT person that you don't seem to be aware of. So when it is he said that, and he's not the only Prime Minister who has said that, nearly every single one of them in the past have said the same exact thing. Now, here's what it is I want Trinidad to be able to understand and recognize about this buggery law. The reason why Jason Jones went after this, and the reason why the LGBT community, is so hyper-vigilant in advocating for this law to be repealed, is because every time the LGBT issue came up in this country from a government or state perspective, and especially when they go to international organizations such as the United Nations, and they are being held accountable for their anti-LGBT and homophobic laws that in our books, the first thing they always point to is the Buggery law. And the reason why they say that is because they know the Buggery law is attached to the Savings Clause law in our country. What is the Savings Clause law? The Savings Clause law is a law that simply states every single law that was put in the books that govern our country before we became an independent nation is now saved, meaning that those laws, regardless of the fact of whether it applies to our modern day progressive society today, it doesn't matter. It is now saved, and therefore our legislatures and our judiciary has to abide by those laws, which is what this verdict, which is why this verdict came out the way it did. You know, the judges had no choice because it was a law that was put in our books before we became independent. It didn't matter whether it was justified in today's progressive society or whether it was, illegal or moral or immoral. The fact that it was there before independence, it is considered a safe law. So the judges who enforce laws, so to speak, or make laws, they have to, go by what is written in our law books. So therein lies the predicament that we find ourselves in today.
Do you think that, because you kind of jumped ahead of me there when I was going to bring up the SAFE law, do you think that it can perpetuate legal discrimination? For example, in the last case, in 2018 case with Jason Jones, he brought up a lot of incidents where he was personally harassed or personally attacked. And when he went to the people in our country, organizations in our country that's supposed to protect us, the PTSD, etc., he was discriminated against. He wasn't protected, he was discriminated against. So do you think that this can bring about any sort of legal discrimination? And what type of legal discrimination can LGBTQ citizens face with this law now being overturned?
Well, that's the sad thing, right? So now that this law is reinstated in our law books and now it's back to being the law of the land, essentially in a nutshell, what it does, it's legalized discrimination. That's what this law is, by upholding a colonial era law that now criminalizes consensual same-sex relations. This court has effectively reinforced systemic discriminations against LGBTQ people. So, and again, that contradicts the principles of equality and non-discrimination that are supposedly enshrined in our Constitution, which is supposed to protect all citizens, regardless of all their backgrounds, right? So again, and in doing that, what it does is that it increases the stigma and the vulnerability of this marginalized group. Right? So this ruling now has now given the opportunity to embolden many of the hostilities against LGBTQ people face. So now you're talking about legitimizing societal discrimination and increasing the risk of violence, the harassment, the exclusion, lack of opportunities, bullying that we are subjected to from both a societal and economic perspective. So again, this is when people say that LGBT people have so much rights and privileges, and I don't understand what they mean by when it is we're talking about discrimination. I mean, as an openly gay man, I have to laugh at this. Yes, I am able to get a job. But if my employer was the one, maybe he's watching this program right now. I mean, I don't have to worry about it because he already knows. But if didn't know and he's watching this program right now and I'm crazy enough to come out to national television and speak on this issue openly, he can probably call me up right after this interview airs and says, you know what, I don't think you are the perfect representation for my company. And he doesn't have to even let me know that it's because I'm gay, but it's probably that's probably his reason why. And what is my legal recourse? Which court of law am I going to go to and say my employer just told me he's firing me because I am gay, because I'm LGBT? Are my human rights going to be protected? I don't have the human rights when it comes to those levels of protection. So when we talk about it from a simple perspective like that, this is what we are referring to.
What does this say about the mental health of LGBTQ citizens? Have you spoken to anybody that may have taken this especially hard?
Well, yes. I mean, listen, I have been feeling calls and I've got some messages from so many people in the past couple of days. I've also gotten calls from, friends and colleagues who are living abroad and questioning how could this possibly have happened. And, they were like, WTF, I thought this was a done deal. And, Trinidad is is leading the way and showing the other Caribbean countries as well as the Commonwealth, the wider Commonwealth, where we stand when it comes to issues relating to non-discrimination and equality. A lot of people are genuinely scared, but I think that's the message that I want to send to LGBT people across Trinidad and Tobago right now. Is that, even though this law is a setback for us, the road to progress and to change is always going to be a long road. No one ever said it was going to be easy. No one said that that there won't be a lot of bumps along the routes and a lot of obstacles. And that's all that this is. It's an obstacle. Jason Jones would have said that to us, when he filed his motion. It's not going to be overnight. Things are not going to change. And even if it is the judgment was to come down from the Privy Council tomorrow and repeal what the Court of Appeal just reinstated. That doesn't necessarily mean that homophobia is going to immediately be dismissed. Now, it may embolden us and empower us because now we have the law on our side and we feel protected, and that's a great. But changing the minds and hearts of people on an issue that, as we just talked about, some people see it as very controversial and very taboo. It's going to take a long time. But again, I always tell people our existence is our resilience, and continue to be who you are. Don't run back into that closet. Don't feel ashamed. And final thing I would say, this is an opportunity where allies get to step up. There are so many people, and I can tell you as a gay man, in my own country, I had the opportunity, like many of my colleagues and friends who are now living abroad and left this country because of their sexual orientation and the lack of opportunities that they thought would not have been afforded to them. I am still here mainly because I have so much support. Now, I'm one of the privileged few. There are many others who don't have that support. And some of this I have received has been primarily from straight allies. And I always tell my straight allies, I appreciate your support. I welcome it. I need it, but I need you to take it further. In this moment where we have a law that's literally saying that's how I don't want you to exist. I mean, I don't want to be too dramatic, but that's essentially what this law is trying to say to us. This is where you as an ally need to get up and step up a little bit more instead of just sitting in front of your laptops and your computer screens and liking a comment or posting a message or just sending a WhatsApp message to someone that walk with us when we are protesting on the streets. Speak to your parliamentarians when they're coming to you door to door now because it's election season. Let them know this may not affect me because I'm a straight person, but it affects so many of my friends and colleagues and family members, and I will not stand for it. This is the next step that we need.
So we would be closing in a little bit, but I wanted to speak to the issue of morality. So it can be argued that individuals in places of power are attempting to dictate public social norms through law. But would you agree that it's that cut or dry, or do you think that there's more nuance to that and bringing into question religious groups?
Well, I love the fact that, in both the High Court judgments as well as the Court of Appeal, the issues of morality and religion were not the arguments that both judges in those courts, legislate on, or should I say ruled on. It was simply a legal matter. But to answer your question about morality and religion, I laugh because I have to ask people, is it that your religion is sanctioning discrimination and treating people unfairly? I mean, we talk so much about, how religion is supposed to be inclusive, it's supposed to unite, it's supposed to be about forgiveness, it's supposed to be about being non-judgmental. If you truly are a religious person, regardless of what your faith is, and again, there's no LGBT person, certainly not myself, who's telling you how to worship and what your religion should be. I'm not trying to take away your rights and privileges based on your religion. You can practice your religion whenever you want to, but who are you to judge me the same way who am I to judge you? It's not an issue about morality. Again, people talk about, about this being an immoral thing. Again, going back to what it is I said at the top of our conversation, me being gay is the least interesting thing about me. I can tell you that. I can put my head on a block and say that. There is so much about me as a human being, and that's where you should see me as a human being. I have dreams, I have goals, I have ambitions, I have fears, I have doubts, I have problems and issues just like everybody else. who I sleep with and how I choose to love and who I choose to love should not be of your concern. It's not impacting you. It's not affecting you in any way, which way, shape, or form. And you don't get to judge me. The same way I don't get to judge you. This is not a moral issue. You have to look deep within yourself and ask yourself, if it is, I'm seeing LGBT people in a negative light because of whatever belief or morals or religious beliefs that you have, and these people are your family members, these people are your neighbors, these people are the persons who sit next to you in the maxi and taxis, these people are who you're working with and you get along with, and these are people who do so much for you, then why are you hating on them? And and where's your sense of morality if where you are coming is always going to be from a place of hate and judgment?
So I kind of sort of brings us to the end of the conversation. I wanted to ask if you had anything else you wanted to leave with the people of Trinidad and Tobago, anything else you wanted to say on behalf of anyone?
Well, I think, again, to reinforce that to all LGBT people who are watching here, I know sometimes it feels like, your rights and your voices are not being heard whatsoever, but, be resilient. If it's one thing I always like to say about LGBT people is that we are a very resilient bunch. I mean, we put up with a lot every single day, having to sometimes, live in the closets and hide a major part of our identity just to survive. But, we will get through this. It's going to take some time, but it will. I do strongly believe, I'm very much optimistic and hopeful that in the end everything is going to fall into place, and one day in our country will recognize us and see us as lawful, legally law-abiding citizens. And if I would say, the interesting thing about this judgment is that based on what the judges and the majority ruling by the judges is that they sort of put the onus back on Parliament. And they're basically saying Parliament has to create laws. It's not us to create a law. We can just enforce the law based on the existing law. Again, so we are in election season. We are about to make another very important decision about the future of our country with regards to who is going to lead it for the next 5 years. This may not be your issue per se because you may not be LGBT, but you have friends and family. And again, a law such as this clearly impacts you. It's written for it's going to impact heterosexuals. They are literally policing, and I don't know how they plan to do it, but they are literally policing what you do in the privacy of your bedrooms. Again, they say it's not enforceable, but this is where it is you get to hold your parliamentarians accountable. So when they meet you at your doorsteps, you have a right and an obligation to speak to them on these issues and tell them, listen, I may not agree with the LGBT agenda. If I think they have an agenda, I don't really like them. That's not for me. But at the end of the day, I live in a country where we have a lot of different races and people from many different backgrounds. This is what made us the proud, triumphant, amazing country that we are. This is why I'm Trinity the Bone. Am I really going to be all of that and say, you know what, you see all of them gay people who sits on the marginalized lane? Leave them. No, I don't really care about them. You are not being a religious person. You are not being a patriotic citizen if that is your fundamental beliefs are. And so I plead to our allies, really re-educate yourself on these issues. If it is your whole hardcore judgmental beliefs, ask yourself why that is. And then our parliamentarians, you have a job to do. We can sit here and wait for the next 100 years for the Privy Council to deliver a judgment on this. But in that time, you have an opportunity to correct an obvious wrong. Stop hiding behind the savings clause law and saying that you can't touch it. When the whole fact of the matter, the reason why Jason Jones won this case is because they amended the law in the 80s, a law that was supposed to be safe and protected. The Parliament amended it, and that was the loophole that the High Court Judge, Justice Vinja Ramprasad, that was his rationale. It's like you amended it once, even though it was safe. So then that gives the courts the opportunity to be
here. It sets a legal precedent,
Sets a precedent. So again, these are the things that I would want to say both to our parliamentarians, our allies, as well as to the LGBT community. Stay strong, stay resilient. Don't let this set you back. It's just a minor obstacle. We will win this battle in the end. And Pride is coming up. Come out there, represent your interests, and let your country know that you exist and you're not going anywhere.
All right. And I do hope that what I'm about to say next can bring some hope to even you and other activist groups. I spoke with Jason Jones in an Instagram exchange yesterday, and he had this to say on the support that he's been receiving. He says, I wish to thank local Trinbago advocacy groups for their hard work and commitment to the queer liberation struggle. We all want the same thing, full equality and freedom for every Trinbagonian citizen. I'm pursuing this path through the courts on my own without any assistance or support. I am a proudly queer Trinbagonian citizen fighting for my rights, and I am privileged to have access to the resources and legal counsel to support my legal challenge. To be clear, my challenge of our Constitution is just one arm of the arsenal required to break down colonialism, patriarchy, misogyny, and multiple phobias against differently lived experiences of our people. I may remind our citizens of our watchword of tolerance, and that here we must find an equal place. Trinidad and Tobago is for all of we. No one should be excluded. So I do hope that would have brought some hope to the issue. Yeah.
So that, and finally, if I can just say, I just want to say thanks to you guys in the media. You all have been, true allies to us in some ways, and also we also have to fight with you guys a little bit because there's always, greater education to be had, and sometimes, we hold you guys accountable with respect to the way how just some media partners and some media houses report on the LGBT issue. Again, we are not a salacious headline. We are actual people with real issues that is impacting the quality of life that we lead as law-abiding, tax-paying citizens in this country. So we don't, I caution the media sometimes, when you're reporting the LGBT issue, never forget that there's a human behind that headline. Please, there's always an opportunity for all of us to do better. So Jada, thank you so much for the opportunity. I know you had to really push me to come on TV this morning and do it, but it was a pleasure, and I encourage the little push that you give me to do it. So I do appreciate that, and thanks for all of your support and all of your colleagues here at WESN.
All right, I appreciate the comments. Thanks so much. And yes, accountability across the board for the media is important, and I do like that you would have pointed that out. So thanks again. Thanks for joining us, and I do hope that you have a beautiful day.
You too. It's a long weekend. Enjoy it.
I will. You too. Yeah. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay.
All right. So that brings us to the end of our scheduled program here, AM Prime. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys. So I wanted to, of course, leave you guys on a quote. It says, "Winners never quit, and quitters never win." Throughout all of the times we've been doing these quotes, we want to just push the narrative of resilience. We want to push the narrative of pushing through and being diligent and getting to your goal no matter what. So I do hope that brings some sort of encouragement to you guys. And I just wanted to put the quote was by Vince Lombardi. All right. So just a little quick reminder that you can find us on our YouTube or Facebook, where you can leave your comments and suggestions for us to engage with you. Head to WESNCC, again WESNCC, to engage with us now, and your comments can be featured on AM Prime. I do hope that you have a beautiful day. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.